Good afternoon and welcome to Birdland Media Works. I'm your host, Danielle Palli, and today I'm joined by Dr. Roger Landry. Dr. Roger Landry is a preventive medicine physician and author of the award-winning book Live Long, Die Short, A Guide to Authentic Health and Successful Aging. He is also the president of Masterpiece Living, a group of multidisciplined specialists in the field of aging who partner with organizations to empower older adults to maximize their unique potential and challenge the current perceptions of aging. Trained at Tufts University School of Medicine and Harvard University School of Public Health, Dr. Landry was also a flight surgeon in the Air Force for more than 22 years, keeping pilots and other aircrew healthy and performing at their best. Dr. Landry retired as a highly decorated full colonel and chief flight surgeon at Air Force Surgeon General's office in Washington, D.C. After duty on 5 continents. Dr. Landry, it is an honor to have you join us today.
The honor's mine, Danielle. I love working with you.
I love working with you as well. So, Dr. Landry, can you share with the audience your role as a flight surgeon in the Air Force and how it prepared you for your current work with Masterpiece Living?
Surely. Well, I'll start with a little humor, as I usually do. And what do those two groups have in common, older adults and flyers? I like to think they both have a very strong appreciation for the effects of gravity. I say that, but truly, these two groups are very similar in the sense that an aviator must be at their very best in order to prevent serious accident, injury, or even death. As older adults, as we get older, it's very important that we be at our very best to not only avoid things happening to us, but if something does happen to us, whether be it physical, emotional, some kind of loss, it's absolutely important that we be at our very best in order to be able to have the resilience necessary to handle that. As a flight surgeon, that was my job. I took care of aviators, and my job was to make sure that when they flew, they were at the very best that they can be, that there was nothing that was going to compromise their performance in the air, because if it did, it could result in serious injury or even death. And so they were young, healthy people. So it was a matter of being very close to them, having rapport, understanding what was going on in their lives, understanding aviation, understanding their environment, and making sure that they felt comfortable to tell me anything that might be going on and let me decide whether that was an important factor relative to their particular mission. So it was really it's one of the 3 specialties of preventive medicine, and it really deals with a population. Even though I dealt with individuals, I also dealt with the population, and particularly when I moved up into higher positions, my job had to do with policy regarding this population. How do we protect this population? How do we nourish and keep this population healthy and performing at its very best? So leaving the Air Force, my specialty essentially demanded that I find a new population. Now, commonly, that was often children, because children, you have the effect of many years of life left to make a significant difference. However, at this time, research had just come out on older adults about the fact, from the MacArthur Foundation study actually, that showed us that lifestyle was the major determinant in how we age. And so all of a sudden, this group of older adults had the possibility of significantly changing the trajectory of their individual lives and as a group. And so all of a sudden, there became a huge amount of potential available, potential for their particular lives, but also the potential for limiting the huge amount of healthcare costs that are dedicated to the later stages of life. So if you could avoid certain chronic diseases and other serious threats as you age, you could have a higher quality of life. But as a society, we would have a whole lot less healthcare costs. So this was a dynamic, important field where there was a lot of potential to do good. And so I jumped in.
Okay, so you started with a healthy population, moved to children, and then moved to older adults. So basically, you spent your entire life as a preventive medicine physician seeing many varied populations. In that time, what have you learned about what it takes to keep people healthy and aging at their best at any age?
Danielle, like so many things, we humans make things too complicated. We have, we're always discovering new things, and how we interpret those new research items and the many claims that are out there for new approaches to a diet or exercise or whatever can easily confuse us. And what is good one day seems to not be good the next day. When it really comes down to our health and healthy aging, as humans, it's pretty simple. We've been around a long time, and during those eons, we lived a particular life, and we have thrived because of that lifestyle. It's hard to imagine, but for 99% of the time we've been on this earth, we lived a pretty different life. We were hunter-gatherers. So as hunter-gatherers, we moved a lot. We were actually very intellectually engaged in learning all the time, even though there weren't a lot of books or any books to learn. We knew about nature and where the food was and where the weather and how to build houses and when to move. And we usually learned from our elders, by the way. And we were absolutely socially connected because we couldn't survive without it. And everyone had a role. There was never a question of, quotes, retiring or being too young even to do something for the tribe or the group. And that is in our very DNA. And even though society has changed so rapidly since the Industrial Revolution, we're moving faster and faster. We're in a high-tech world. We're moving faster, but we're not moving more. We're moving less because of automobiles and the many things we have to prevent us from moving or to obviate the need to move, which we think is a good thing, but as it turns out, it's not. And worst of all, I think, is that we have lost our sense of value of our older adults. Every society prior to the Industrial Revolution, and as the blue zones do now, those are places where people, live to be very old and yet are very vital. They and our previous societies considered older adults cultural treasures. Full of wisdom, full of experience, successfully navigating the many slings and arrows of life and making it through. These are heroes. These are survivors. These are people who have seen it all, so to speak. And we always, all societies previously, valued that kind of guidance and wisdom and experience. But
not something we see typically in America, maybe still in some other countries, but definitely not here.
No. I think we have become fascinated with youth. I think a lot of that had to do with the marketing industry in general that started the early 20th century and has carried this through. And with the Industrial Revolution, older adults couldn't make as many widgets. And so that's why we began to focus on youth and sort of marginalize our older adults. I like to say we pasteurize them like horses. And this has continued. And with the high technical aspect of our community, our world now, our societies, I think this is happening even more and more, even though older adults are adapting to that technology, just maybe not as they don't worship it the way perhaps younger people do, or they also realize that there's some dark sides to that technology, whereas younger people tend not to see that. And so we're living a much, much different life than we did before. And I really think this perception of aging as decline only is unfortunately living up to that stereotype, that erroneous stereotype. Who was it? Henry Ford, who said, if you think you can do something or you think you cannot do something, you're probably right. So this lowered expectations for advanced age, and even not so advanced age, it has a way of being a self-fulfilling prophecy.
Yeah. Now, we've had conversations about this in the past. So an important mission of Masterpiece Living is to challenge the perception of aging. You just touched on it a little bit. What is the current misconception that society has about our aging population?
I believe that the stereotype of decline only with age and loss only with age, losing friends, losing physical function, losing mental function, losing gravitas, losing visibility even. And as again, dramatically opposed to blue zones or our previous societies. This stereotype, this misconception is, as I said before, results in not only older adults being left unused and not tapped into with this great human capital that they have, but it also creates a myth that has our society essentially throwing away huge amounts of human capital, and in the process, throwing away the quality of life of so many people who also buy into that. So if you're an older adult and you have low expectations for older and advanced age, well, again, as we said, that more than likely is going to come true. And so buying into it ourselves as individuals is hurtful. Not only does the society suffer, but we as individuals.
Right, where we're focusing only on the negative aspects and not about the gains in wisdom and knowledge and experience that you can share, and believing, that you can get healthier and recover instead of thinking every time something happens, oh, it's just because I'm old.
You've heard me say, if you go to one of the blue zones, to Okinawa, say, and you ask them how old they are, they will lie to you and tell you they're older. So can you imagine a scenario where someone in their 40s wants to be older? Yeah. I understand when you're 20, you want to be 21, but where you're 40s and 50s and you want to be older because the position of an older adult in that society is so important and so revered and so desirous in its contributions and its just general status. We can't conceive of that as in this country, but previous societies and blue zones today, that does exist, and we see it in the remarkable lives that people live to be healthy and functioning into their 9th and 10th decade of life. This is something that is a serious threat and responsible for a lot of lower quality lives, lower quality later decades. Pain, suffering, high healthcare costs, low expectations, and an overall falling short of what is possible.
And I find actually on the receiving end, I think it's embarrassing. Like if I'm 45, okay, and somebody says to me, "Oh, it's your birthday. Are you turning 22?" No, I'm turning 45. And they think they're giving you a compliment, but if anything, it actually just makes you feel very silly. That what's wrong with a 45 or 65 or an 85. So you bring up some really good points there.
Oh, so do you, Danielle. I mean, that's so well said. I mean, we cannot conceive of a society where saying you're 45 or 55 or 65 is viewed as you would, at least as you would view any age, 20, 25, whatever, and not immediately thinking, oh my goodness, wow, you're dealing with all these terribly negative things, and that must be a bad place to be. We talk frequently with many of the people who are in the communities we partner with Masterpiece Living. We partner with communities to help them, places where people go and age in a better way. And just this week, I was on a telephone call with some older adults, and I wasn't the lead. I was just kind of listening. And I heard some things that's just made my heart sing, really. I heard people in their late 70s and early 80s saying, this is the best time of my life. This isn't that, they're just saying I'm making it the best time of my life, or I'm dealing with things and doing the best I can. No, they were saying this time of my life. And the research is very clear that the 70s, the decade of the 70s, are the people who are the happiest, yes, who are less stressed, I think very experienced and know what's important and what isn't important in life. They most of them have some sort of physical abilities and the desire to explore and grow and try new things, and are unencumbered by most of the responsibilities that we all had when we were younger, with children and career. And in fact, I call some of those things the tyrannies. The vanity that we have and the worry over our competence, that's all gone for most people in there when they get old. This is first of all, it's a privilege to grow old. I mean, not everyone does. And so to be old is, I just love that in the blue zones it's revered. And, ultimately it's our goal to make that the same in our society. Not that that we should focus on as old age only, but okay, like any other age, there are so many wonderful positive things that come at this age. Don't shy away from it. Realize it's a privilege. Realize that this is a place that's very special and unique.
And you mentioned the Industrial Revolution. I mean, back in that time, what did they live to? If they lived to 40, they were lucky. So the fact that we're living to a healthy 100 years old and we have that capacity and we have so much time to devote to things that maybe in retirement we could do now that we couldn't do when we were younger, as you said, when we're raising a family. So there's so much potential in this time to be here at this time. I think it's a remarkable time period.
Well, it is, and we call it a longevity dividend, but there's no guarantee that the number of years that you may live are necessarily going to be high quality. And that's why the research is clear that it's lifestyle. And that's why we in Masterpiece Living and what you and I do, try to make people aware that the choices they make every day for their lifestyle and how much they move and how much they continue to learn and how socially connected they are and how much meaning and purpose they have, that produces the resilience, and that produces the kind of strength, be it physical, emotional, intellectual, social strength, that again will allow them to be at their very best for this longevity dividend. So that it truly is a dividend and not a sentence.
Now, I'm going to put you on the spot a little bit because you once told a story of how you stuck your foot in your mouth pretty much when talking to Chuck Yeager. Can you tell us that story?
Yes, I was in the 30s, and that's the last mistake I made. Hardly. Well, I was privileged to get to meet Chuck Yeager, and he's still a friend today. When he was in his late 50s, he came to the Flight Test Center at Edwards Air Force Base, where I was the chief flight surgeon, and I got to do a physical exam on him. He was flying for defense contractors. He had retired from the Air Force. And after his physical, he was sitting there and graciously sharing stories with me of his remarkable life and career in aviation. And at one point, he told me, he said, I'm just saying this the first time today, Doc, but I think on the 50th anniversary of breaking the comeback here, which was still maybe 15 years away for him, I'm going to do it again. And here comes the mistake. Dr. Landry, who knew it all, said, but Chuck, you'll be 73 years old then. And he looked at me, and he has this laser look sometimes that makes you very uncomfortable. And then he said, what's your point? And what was my point? And my point was that this is a number, 73 in this case, and I naturally associated decreased function, inability to grow faster than the speed of sound, just by nature of the number. Now, certainly some people at 20 can't do that or have the opportunity to do that. But, I was just assuming. And so,
Didn't he do it two times? Not just the one time. He did it two more times, right?
50th, 55th, 60th, and 65th.
Wow.
Did it, not too long ago. He's in his mid-90s now. And that kind of attitude, I can do it. I'm competent, living a lifestyle of adventure, physical movement, intellectual curiosity. And he has so many friends. A lot of them have passed, and unfortunately, many died in aircraft accidents. But he still has so many friends and so many people who revere him. He's one of those heroes of the current older generation because what he did was quite remarkable. And so I made the mistake, and that was my first lesson, and it stuck. I'm telling you. So Chuck has done me a great service, and I occasionally slip, as most of us do, and say something not in a malevolent way, but is frankly a misconception and even ageism. And we all have to be careful about that because we've grown up with it and it's internalized. But that particular day makes me less likely to do that.
Yeah, yeah. Now, speaking of what people say, here are some things that I've heard recently, and it's either somebody directing it at themselves or someone else. I'm too old for that. You must be getting senile in your old age. She looks great for her age. 60 is the new 40, and he didn't age well at all. How dangerous is it for people to buy into these negative stereotypes of aging?
Well, I think it's the biggest threat that we have as we age, to not think like Chuck Yeager, to think that age is that you're a broken human being, that that because you're old, you're less than someone who's younger. Certainly you're not as fast, but you're smarter. Certainly you're maybe not as wrinkle-free, but you're so experienced. And it's like any stage of life. There are benefits and there are some things where you're maybe not as up to speed as others. And it's, we really should strive, and we do in Masterpiece Living, to make chronological age irrelevant. It is what you bring to the table, and not a number. I mean, honestly, in many cases, we'll be talking about this. I know. I'm sure you'll ask the question about how we view aging, and it is that not a type of prejudice, and indeed it is. But as long as we hear things like this, and I think the greeting card industry they are some of the worst offenders of this. If you just go in and try to get a birthday card for someone who's over 40, you're going to find at least half of them make some sort of negative reference to age. And it's funny. And yes, it's many times good to laugh through life, and particularly with adversity and things. It makes our immune system stronger. It makes us connected to others. But this kind of laughter, these are like those racist jokes. These are things that are dark humor, and with them comes an internalized acceptance and belief that age is only about decline, that age doesn't have possibilities and doesn't have potential, and you cannot grow. And this can be subtly and insidiously internalized, as it is for all of us who've grown up in the last 4, 5, 6 decades of life. The one, I know you and I have talked about this before, the one I love is Still. He is still riding a bike. He is still going to work. He is still driving a car. And why? Why would you put in still? You wouldn't put that in for a 30-year-old, or for most things with a 40-year-old or even a 50-year-old.
Right, a 15-year-old. Oh, he's still walking. Really?
Yeah.
Well.
yeah, that wouldn't come across so well, And so, again, these things aren't malevolent. Mm-hmm. But they are destructive in the sense that they're internalized as a standard, creates low expectations. That's what we see, those low expectations. Because again, if I'm an older adult in society and I believe that I am marginalized, that no one wants to hear my view, that I have no role, more than likely all I'm going to experience is my joints going and my heart starting to get weaker and pain and suffer. Really, that's not a particularly, that's not a confident attitude. That's not very optimistic. And unfortunately, what we see is more than likely that's exactly what happens. Ellen Langer, who is a psychologist.
I love her study.
At Harvard. Yes, yeah. I know. We've discussed this. You always light up, so I have to tell the other people who are listening. She took some 70-year-old men, and this was in the 70s, actually, and they were in their 70s, and she brought them to a place that she had recreated the world from 20 years earlier, so the 1950s. She got old 50s radios, old 50s TVs. There weren't many. There weren't hardly any TV stations then. No computers, no cell phones, and they had to relinquish everything that was a reminder of the current time. And she took photos, hearing tests, blood tests. She took videos of them before they went, and they went into this place. And in just one week, she saw their behavior remarkably change to be much younger, active, optimistic. The photos, their families said, "My God, what happened? They look so healthy and happy and well." And even the blood tests and the hearing tests and the vision tests all got better.
Isn't that amazing? You just think you
amazing.
can see better, so you do.
Just truly amazing. And she has made a career of this. She did this early in her career. She has written books, and one very important one and most recent is Counterclockwise by Ellen Langer. And basically her point is that to the extent that we expect something, that our brain will attempt to program us to make that real, and our bodies will go along with that to make that real. Now, face it, if I want to look like an 18-year-old, okay, that's a little crazy. But to the extent that and we all feel much younger than we really are, and to the extent that we run with that and we behave that way, and we want to continue to grow and be curious and connect to others and have purpose and move more as we would younger. Well, that happens. And so she's still doing the research on that. We still don't know all the ins and outs of it, but it is a real thing. And we see brains changing because we can scan brains now. So if someone is, quotes, programming themselves to grow and to be not really younger chronologically, but feel that they are younger and act like they are younger, making chronological age irrelevant, in other words, that we see things happening physiologically and in the brain that reflect that is actually what is happening.
And theoretically, that makes sense. You get a cut and your body heals itself. You break a bone, it heals itself. So if you're thinking, okay, I feel like an 18-year-old, I behave like an 18, you might not go back that many years in time, but your body's going to respond and start to regenerate. So it makes sense from a theoretical standpoint that you could actually reverse some of these things simply by lifestyle.
Well, it does, Danielle, and when this sort of boggles the mind, but basically we replace almost all of our cells every few months or so. And so why do we replace them with, say you have a bad knee or a bad heart, or why are we replacing them basically with cells that are not functioning well? What's going on there? That kind of boggles the mind when you think we are indeed replenishing our cells. And so the possibilities, as you just alluded to, could then we influence those cells to actually be much more youthful type cells. And again, this isn't an age thing; it's a performance thing.
Right.
It's the cells, the muscle cells that are stronger. Organ cells where that organ is functioning much better than it did before. I think we'll be seeing that personally now that we've mapped the human genome and we can track these things and see the result. I don't think we've mentioned this before in our conversations, but there's a whole new field of epigenetics where now that we can map the human genome, we can see someone may have a bad gene, and we follow them. And those who live a lifestyle that we're talking about of moving and learning and socially connected and having meaning and purpose versus the traditional usual aging lifestyle. And we see that those people, the first group, are less likely to see that gene express itself, namely less likely to see that disease actually happen.
And if it does happen in epigenetics, to be able to turn that receptor off and on.
Exactly.
So it's some pretty remarkable stuff going on.
So we're not just the victim of our genes, so to speak, or of our parents, So it's a whole new, brave new world.
Yeah. The book is Live Long, Die Short, A Guide to Authentic Health and Successful Aging, and you can pick up a copy at livelongdieshort.com. Dr. Roger Landry, thank you so much for joining us today.
It has been a pleasure, Danielle, as always.